Machine Gun Kelly traveled down the outlaw trail. Machine Gun Kelly was a desperate man. This was hard as hell. Watch out, machine gun, don't let her run you round. Don't let a woman make you out to be a clown. Machine gun. Tell you about Catherine Kelly. She's tired of being so small. She figured if they kidnapped a rich man's son, they could end the world of crime. Watch out, machine gun, don't let her run you round. Don't let a woman make you out to be a clown. Machine gun. Watch out, Machine Gun Kelly. Be careful of what you do. If you get listen to your old lady, there ain't no telling what'll happen to you. Machine Gun. Well, the government boys, they come up on Machine Gun, came and took that boy away. Stuck him in a hole in Leavenworth prison. Did that till his dying day. Oh, watch out, machine gun, don't let her run around. Don't let a woman make you out to be a clown. Machine gun.
Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show, live here on assignment here in Los Angeles, California, and joined by two dear friends of the program and also two incredible musicians, Steve Postell, Danny Kortchmar. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hello, hello.
Steve, I wanted to ask you a question. Could you talk to the audience about where your ears grew most early on the bandstand?
That's interesting. Well, I had a little different sort of early trajectory than some of our buddies.
In what way?
In that I kind of accidentally ended up playing in Broadway orchestras, and it was I was actually sitting with a friend of mine who was his name was Myron Weiss, and he had played Man of La Mancha on Broadway, and there was a tour. And the phone rang, and he's talking, and he goes, no, I don't want to do it. And then he went, hey, wait a minute. He goes, I was like 19, 20. He goes, you want to go on tour? So the next thing I knew, I was playing Man of La Mancha. So I spent about 8 years doing a lot of that pit work, Broadway shows, toured. Did a tour with John Raitt, who was Bonnie's dad.
Wow. And so your ears, you had to listen intently. I mean, to me, that's somewhat of that could be a formulaic show, but you had to listen very closely.
Well, I mean, there was, I had my bands and I was playing. I was just saying that there was there was a sort of side, and I went to a conservatory. I also played classical music.
Right.
So I was kind of, so my sort of development, I mean, Danny and I both came up tromping around the village and listening to some pretty incredible music. And back then there was it was everything. I mean, it was bluegrass, it was blues, it was rock and roll, it was fusion, it was straight jazz, it was bebop, so there was New York. Back then was just an incredible place. Your ear just got inundated all the time.
So you Cooch, and you go back to that time. When was the first time you can?
Yeah, we knew each other in New York, but we both grew up in New York.
Yeah.
Really? So you just never crossed paths there?
No, I'm older than him, so.
Right.
Yeah, he's older than me.
So, we weren't contemporaries at that time.
Talk to the audience, Danny. Talk to the audience about how you and Postell connected.
Well, actually, Steve came over and introduced himself. I was playing at the Troubadour with Carole King and James Taylor. They were doing like 3 nights at the Troubadour.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was filmed.
What year was it about this?
2008, I think.
Wow.
And
Time flies, brother.
Damn it. Yeah.
It was with the immediate family band, or was
No,
it?
that was with it was with Russ and Lee and myself with the band. Carol and James. That was the whole band. We played 3 nights at the Troub, and Steve came over and introduced himself. Yeah, man, how you doing? What's up? And it turned out I was living in northern Connecticut at the time, and he knew a woman named Dana Pomfret, who turned out to be a terrific friend and just a great gal up there. And she and I hung out a lot, and
Lived in the same town.
Yeah. So that was an additional thing. And then whenever Steve was around, we would hang out. And then I moved out here, and of course that we started hanging out more and playing more. Steve has a kind of revolving cast of characters that play the Night Train Music Club, which is a kind of ad hoc jam band kind of thing, I guess you'd call it.
I mean, could you talk about the first time you guys played together? What was it? What did it feel like?
I remember that.
Yeah.
Steve, Postell, you can take that.
We have mutual friends, and we were at a New Year's Eve. I think it was a New Year's Eve party.
Yeah, it was.
And so we had just talked socially at that point. I was working when they were playing the Troubadour. I just finished a record that Leland Sklar was on and that Nathaniel Kunkel mixed. So Nathaniel invited me to that show. Actually, he and Leland. That's why I was.
It's Russ's son.
Russ's
That's
son, great engineer. So we were at this party, and of course everybody there was like, "Hey, you two guys play guitar. Play guitar for us. Entertain us, wind us up." And
So we did.
So we did, and it was. I mean, the story I tell is at the end, Danny goes, "Wow, man, it's like we've been playing together for years." And I said, "Well, we have. It's just I was playing to your records."
I dig, man. I think,
It's very easy to play with Steve immediately. And,
Danny, I wanted to ask you about the music you were brought up on, the Curtis Mayfields, the Jack McDuffs. When you would see the guitar players in those bands, what did you learn about rhythm guitar as it relates to ultimately raising the collective consciousness of the entire band just through that hypnotic rhythm? Because my point is that the guitar was not a lead instrument for many years. It was the saxophone. Right. And then when rock came in, it started to go, in that direction. But you came up when the guitar was still a rhythm instrument. So what did you learn from those cats? What did you take away from those cats, like Benson or,
Well, those guys, they could comp jazz and bebop like crazy, but George Benson obviously was a killer. Played killer solos. I recommend to everybody Our Miss Brooks, which is recorded by Jack McDuff, on which Benson plays lead, plays solos. It's absolutely off the charts, great. Anyway, I knew I wasn't going to be a jazz musician because as much as I loved listening to jazz, I was also listening very heavily to guys like Lightning Hopkins and Muddy Waters and Elmore James and all that. So I really loved that. And then also, at that time, all hell was breaking loose in New York. There was every kind of music you can imagine. And we used to go to the Apollo Theater all the time and see shows there. I saw everyone at the Apollo Theater. And, I was fascinated by kind of soul music, R&B guitar styles. That really interested me. And it got to me, and I became very influenced by that stuff. But that wasn't really jazz. That was more.
No, but I'm just trying to get from you guys to talk about how that adherence to rhythm lent itself to improvisation. You may not consider yourself a jazz musician, but you both can improvise great.
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to do that, but it comes from the rudiments of being able to
Well, I think actually I would say that it's,
you
they're
riff on
two
it.
separate things. And one of the things I see a lot in the young people now, they can solo their asses off. We were just talking about it. They play
Huge facility.
a lot faster than he and I ever could put together. But they can't play a rhythm part to save their lives a lot.
And you know what? You wind up staring at the wall because it's just there's no feel.
So there are two separate things. Now, if you can do, to me, if you can play great rhythm, but then there's guys like B.B. King who only played lines. He didn't play rhythm guitar.
Right.
So I do consider them. It's nice to. I think both of us are fans of both things. But if I can only do one thing, I'd rather play a great rhythm part and be able to hold.
Isn't it also fair to say that we know, Danny, that nobody wants to get up there and see somebody wanking it for 20 minutes soloing. So
Not anymore,
because
that's for sure.
you know because you had that rhythm built in, you were able to maybe solo and express yourself and say what you needed to say in a more efficient period of time.
Well, when I started doing sessions and playing on pop records, the solo was 8 bars.
Right.
So we weren't expected to extend or play bebop. It's a great skill to have. I don't have it. I love listening to that stuff, but again, as I said, I don't have it.
Some of those section records would say otherwise. I mean,
that was kind of what fusion, or I don't even know what to call it. I have jazz phrasing that is the same. I play faux jazz. Let's put it that way, like fake.
Faux jazz. I love it.
Jazz.
I love it.
Because the phrasing influenced me a lot. I listen to a lot of saxophone players coming up, but again, I can't play. I can't run changes. If you can't play, it might as well be spring in several different keys and blow like crazy over it. You're not a jazz musician.
Well, the audience wants you to play, so whatever you feel in your hearts to play. We're joined here with Steve Postell, Danny Kortchmar on the Jake Feinberg Show, having a ball.
Let's play one of yours, Steve.
All right. Let's play "Walking Through These Blues."
That's a good tune.
Gotta find it. This tune we're going to play is I just was working all at the same time on 3 records that I'm really happy about. One of them.
Tell the audience. Yeah.
One of them is the Danny's record, which we just finished. Incredible project, and it's what we did is we did 8 of Danny's great songs that everybody knows for Henley and Jackson Brown and James Taylor, and then 4 incredible new tunes. And the band it was just an honor to do that. And then we just finished doing that. I also just finished a record for Dan Navarro from the Low End Navarro and the fellow who wrote We Belong. Great, that record's done. So the one that got pushed a little back was mine. And but I'm real close. I'm gonna start mixing in about 10 days.
This is a tune we're going to hear off your album.
And this is off of that album.
Here we go.
I'm looking at the sky, feeling kind of small. I'm looking at my mind, take some sense of it all. Got my hands full of dirt, got my feet in the got my tools from the shed. I'm digging out my soul. When there's nothing more to gain and nothing more to lose, I stay out of the rain, trying to keep up with you. I'm looking for the truth, and I'm walking through these. I got some brand new shoes for walking through these. Let's find some high ground. Watch the waters rise.
for walking through. I can see you in the shadow, but nothing looks the same. If I don't find my way home, I'm the only one to blame. 2, 3, 4. I once had a true love knocking at my door. Her picture in a frame. I don't have that anymore. When there's nothing more to gain, and nothing more to lose, stay out of the rain, trying to keep up with the news, bad news. I'm looking for the truth, and I'm walking through these. Said I'm looking for the truth, and I'm walking through these blues. I've got some brand new shoes for walking through these. I'm walking through these in my brand new shoes. I'm walking through it. Walking through these blues.
Walking through these blues. Steve Postell. Steve, can you talk about your concept of the recording process? I mean, when you're talking about Cooch and Sklar, Kunkel, Waddy, I mean, they're all playing together. Do you? I was transcribing my interview with Don Randy, and he talked about in the recording studio today. It's so different. You get called in, you plug in your synth or your piano. There's a producer and an engineer. You do your part, and you go home. How do you? What's your philosophy as it relates? Is everybody got to be in the studio? And I just found that he didn't say it was bad. Mm-hmm. He just said it was different.
Well, I look at it a different way. I mean, I do a lot of production. I have a studio here, and this is part of it. I just think that some guys have one way they work, and they work one way. I'm kind of a student of the whole deal. Styles, music, production, engineering. So when I set out on a project, it has to do what kind of project it is. Now, there's some projects where it really works best to just layer in one track at a time, and you create that way. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some great music gets made that way. I think if I had one more recording to do in my life, I'd do what we just did. We went into Jackson's studio, Groove Masters, and 6 of us together.
All together with some stuff bleeding into each other's mics. Actually, I got my own room.
That's right, you did.
I was the only
You were
guy.
isolated.
That's because I had some acoustic guitar going on.
No baffles though.
Yeah, baffle. Yeah, with baffles.
There were baffles, but Nico Bolas is the engineer.
Yeah,
so
fantastic.
he really knows his
He knows
stuff.
his stuff. Yeah,
That's
and
as much as him.
so the process that I love the most and that I came up with would be at least 4 guys, at least the drummer, the bass player, the guitar player, 2 guitar players, and a keyboard player. The basic guys play this stuff down. And then I do like what we did, and what I did on mine. Then we go back into here, and we can really do the vocals, and we can change some solos, and we can add some colors, and put whatever we need on top of it.
Danny, I just wanted to, being that I was listening back to my Kunkel interview, and he was just talking about Jackson, Carole King, James Taylor. Sure. The idea that you guys always hit live together. Mm-hmm. Okay, and can you talk about the importance of hitting together live?
Well, we grew up that way, me, Russ, and Lee. In other words, our gestation and our birth as session musicians came from working with Peter Asher. So we were out there in the room together, and we learned very quickly how to play together. I'm
sorry, this is the question I wanted to ask you. Yeah. How much, this goes back to the question about a lot of jazzers, you had the ability amongst the musicians to make the creative choices, where the producer and the engineer understood your gifts. The bean counters weren't telling you what to do, so you had a lot of input. Mm-hmm. I mean, even the leaders gave you input.
Well, the input in my case came from these geniuses like Carole King and Lou Adler and Peter Asher, James. That was where the input came, and nobody told us. We were there to play like we already play, not to play some other way or to be given a chart and say play every note. We were there to be ourselves, and we used to rehearse a little bit over Peter's first place that he had here. This is back in the late '60s, and we just figured it out. We figured out how to play these songs. Carole King was very, very seminal and important in my career and in my ability to learn how to play songs. She taught me a tremendous amount about.
Like what?
Well, I played on all her demos. She and Jerry were making demos of all the tunes they wrote, and I played on all of them. For some reason, she believed in me, and she kept calling me to come do these demo sessions, and that's how I learned to play on records. Was those sessions. She's, Carol's a genius, a musical genius, without any question. Not just as a songwriter, but as a producer and arranger.
But in essence, did you ever have a producer come out? Steve Swallow was talking about Arif Mardin coming out at a certain point and saying to him on a tune that he composed, "This is how I want you to play the bass line." Mm-hmm. He got very surly after that. But I mean, did you have producers telling Danny Kortchmar how to play a certain solo?
Fuck no.
No. Didn't I tell you that?
Yeah, that's right. Because there was creative. The people understood the roles and like Carol. She knew you were coming in. She knew what even the micromanaging is what I'm getting at. And I guess maybe what's your advice to people that are more insecure and do micromanage more, and they have producer capabilities and they are in positions? What would be your advice to those cats?
Better musicians.
Well, are you talking about the musicians or the producers?
Producers to know their role.
Well, producer, if he knows his stuff, will get the guy that can play what he wants to hear.
Well, of course, that's if they know.
Right, and not get some guy and try to make him jump through hoops or play something that's not good. When I was producing a lot of records, I always tried to make musicians. I never asked them to do something they couldn't do or was out of their comfort zone, because then you're just going to be struggling. Forget it. It's not worth it. The idea is to get guys that are going to and then get them for the reason that you want them, which is we're going to do something in character, as it were, on your record.
Do we have another Postell or Kortchmar tune we want to break out here? The audience is loving this stuff.
Sure. Let's see.
What do you want to play, man?
A couple of mad geniuses here.
Well, let's see, Steve. What I can play.
It sounds good.
We got a lot of tunes.
A lot of tunes. Shaky Town sounds good.
Yeah, let's do Shaky Town. I haven't been singing much lately, so.
That's all right.
I hope I don't embarrass myself.
Shaky was my nickname at camp.
Is that
I do it.
Well, this tune came from CB talk, truckers dialogue on CB radio. Now I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. I'm sure it isn't with cell phones and everything. But the CB radio had its own language, as everyone from the '70s knows. And because I was touring so much, I wanted to write a song about the combination of drivers, the guys who drove the gear around, and the musicians.
The roadies.
Yeah, well, the roadies, the drivers, the guy who drove the trucks that took our stuff hither and yon, and also the musicians themselves. So I tried to kind of walk in between and have some reference points for both those points.
What's the name of the tune?
Shaky Town.
Shaky Town.
Tell me about how you recorded this.
Yeah, Jackson recorded this on his Running on Empty album, and we recorded it. That whole album was done on the road. And at one point, we were in a motel, a Holiday Inn, and they rented a room and took all the furniture out, just piled it up on the wall, and just took all the furniture out. We did a set of drums.
Love it.
Yeah, the next room over, which they opened the door to, was where the 24 track was with Greg Ladani, and then they set up mics as me, Russell Lee, and David Lindley, about whom I can say nothing but greatness. David Lindley is so.
I love the man. His intellect is beyond as well. Was he playing electric guitar, or was he playing like lap steel?
And lap steel on that.
Beautiful,
version.
Just beautiful.
So
in the motel room.
We recorded the whole thing in a motel room, a Holiday Inn motel room. Yeah. And after I wrote the song, I played it for Jackson. We were on tour doing, like I said, Running on Empty. And I thought maybe this tune will fit in. Well, let me play this tune. I really never thought he was going to jump on it, but he did. He said, "We got to record it." Yeah, let's do it. So we did.
Shaky Town.
That's it. I witnessed those one night stands. Must have played in 1,000 I'm just here tonight, tomorrow I'll be gone. All right, it'll come to me.
Yeah. Make it up.
I've seen folks show their darker side. Sorry about that, folks. Seen them die just for food. And those drivers always wanna hear that same old song. That's a big 10-4 from your back door. Just put that helmet down. This young man feels those 18 wheels that keep turning around and take me down to a shaky town. I heard all those horror tales from all of you U.S. I heard you tell those lies about the love you know. I followed those highway signs. I ran down those thin lines like those
Danny Kortchmar, Steve Postell, sounding great. Keep the comments coming in. People are loving this. Steve, one of the L's on my program is life, and when I talk about life, I mean overcoming adversity. And I was hoping you could talk to the audience about a time in your career where you overcame some adversity, how you overcame it, and how it made you a stronger person and player.
Well, I mean,
you could say you never had that experience.
No. I mean, I'd say one thing is that I feel really, really fortunate that, we're going on 40 years of working, being a musician. That's how I...
Being able to be a full-time musician.
Being a full-time musician. So no matter what has happened, I'm grateful for that. The adversity was more that when I came up, and we have, this little bit of an age difference, and it's interesting.
How big is the difference?
How old are you?
10
years.
10 years. There's a Malcolm Gladwell book, I think it's called Outliers, and one of the chapters he talks about the importance in establishing when successes and not successes of timing, how Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, they were born at the exact right time when those kind of guys could make those kind of steps. He talks about it with athletes, with all kinds of things. I was like 8 years too late for some of my what inspired me, which was the same stuff that inspired Danny. So when I got signed. Just
to the audience, you're talking about like Jimi Hendrix. Who are you talking about exactly?
Well, I mean, all of it. I mean, we both listened to. That was the thing back then. We listened to all the old great blues players and the great jazz players. I mean, we both. You can talk about
Reverend Gary Davis,
Big Brunsey, or Leadbelly, or Duke Ellington, or Coltrane. Or, there was so the influences, and we also grew up in a time, even though with the age difference, where we could go see all this music. But when I got signed by Sid Bernstein, signed me, the guy who brought the Beatles to Shea Stadium, and when he got me the record deal, I was making the music that was still informed by all that, which Danny was a big part of it. Carole King and James Taylor and the Eagles and Henley and Jackson and all that. And the music industry was just starting to change. So the adversity for me was when by the time my record was done, the music I was making was just starting to give way to sort of pop music of the 80s, as opposed to the real singer-songwriter. I mean, we made a beautiful record.
Was it early 80s you made this first? Yes.
I made that.
Okay, so it had sort of 81. Passed its due date to
it was just like, it was just on the... So
how'd you deal with it?
It was, then I got signed with someone else. I mean, it took me a lot of years I kept working. I mean, one of the things that I did was, and I did it intentionally. Like, I'm going to be a singer-songwriter, but I'm also going to be a guy who can write, who can score, who can be a session guy, so that I'm always working in music.
Dig.
So I never went down all the way because I was working. I was touring with someone, but the disappointment that that the visions of, when Sid Bernstein had me next to Ahmet Erdogan, and at the bottom line we were watching Laura Branigan, whose record was about to come out, and Sid puts his arm around me and goes, "He's next." The fact that didn't happen was a big blow. And because I expected it to happen, those people expected it to happen. So what I'm hearing is become as multifaceted as possible, and also continue to work and just woodshed. Just do it. And don't let it. It took me a long time to sort of let that go. Hey, that's not sure. I still have a career, and I still get to play great music, and it's never too late to make more great music. And with people, and or not so great music, whatever you're making. So that there hasn't been a lot of adversity, except for the fact that I had to restructure the way my hopes and dreams kind of were because I was really being groomed to be, they said the next Jackson Browne. I mean, that's what Sid Bernstein thought I was going to be, the next guy in that. And the industry just fundamentally changed. It just changed to the point where that wasn't what. And his suggestion was to go to Nashville, and I didn't want to go to Nashville, and et cetera, et cetera. So. Coach, but I want people to realize this. Your first solo album
You're sitting on that white chair. There's anti-war signs there, self-titled. I think you're playing drums on that.
Yeah.
You the audacity to play the kit. When did you first start playing the traps?
I started playing drums when I was 13, 14, 15. I had a set of drums. My
Really?
mother bought me a set of drums as well as a guitar. I love playing drums. And I would say that I have good drum ideas. I'm not that great of a drummer. I can't. I'm not like. I mean, my best friends are like the greatest drummers ever.
Absolutely, but I guess on that album, which is killer, by the way, and it's very hard to find.
Yeah.
Did you play with the rhythm section, or did you overdub the drum parts?
Overdubbed everything. Yeah.
Overdubbed everything.
Yeah.
Well, we're here with two beautiful cats and total mad geniuses. You guys want to finish up with a tune, whatever you want to play? We loved having you here on the Jake Feinberg Show.
Let's see there.
You want to play that, buddy?
What do you think, man?
Could do a bluesy thing if you want. We could do it's up to you.
All right. Think about this for a second. Well, maybe we should do that tune we always do live. Was it Prisoner of Love? Prisoner of
Sure.
Love?
Or well, if we're gonna do that, let's do 345, which is a similar.
345.
345. It's one of Steve's tunes that he's had for a while. And we always play this live. But a lot of times we open with this. Because it's got a natural feel and a natural groove.
This was on my last record, which was released on a label called Emergent Records. And Emergent Records, to my dismay, no longer exists. But the record stays.
The record stays.
The record stays.
The label no longer.
And let me just grab this.
Timeless musicians here on the Jake Feinberg Show. It's an honor.
Well, great pleasure for us. Steve and I play together all the time.
Yeah, I mean, next time it's going to be the acoustic bag.
And we're part of a big brotherhood, I would say.
Well, I think that's part of my job as a Gen Xer, is to make sure that to connect the generations, and to make sure that cats understand how real music is made from people that live through it.
Well, that would be nice.
We're trying.
And we appreciate that.
Dig.
go.
Before I let you go, I know you got albums coming out. People are loving this, by the way. But when are you guys playing live next?
Good question.
Actually, we haven't told you about it yet, but we're playing. I'm booking him right now.
Are you booking him right now? Huh?
We're playing Bogies on April 22nd
In Westlake.
in Westlake.
It's a happening place. I saw Litcherwood and Garfield there.
Yeah, we have great time there. We have killer bands, and it's always different. So you'll be surprised. Surprise guests. It's always very cool there. Yeah.
And when do you expect your album to come out, Postell?
Well, I'm meeting with the label. Actually, he's coming in from Europe next week, and we'll discuss it. I mean, I'll be mixed. 2 months, I'll have it done. So spring. I'm hoping definitely spring. Definitely before we go to Japan in June.
You're going to Japan in June, and your album is coming out. It's a Japanese label.
Well, we turned it in. It's on a Japanese label. They finished the packaging and all that. It'll come out in April. We're going to go there in June, and we're going to play at the Billboard Live clubs in Osaka and Tokyo.
And that's the Danny Kortchmar and the immediate.
And the immediate family, yes.
The immediate family.
It's with the guys, Russ, Lee, and Waddy, and Steve. So that's something we're all really looking forward to.
Well, I'm hoping Jake Feinberg can become part of that immediate family too.
Well, we are going to play the Troubadour when we get back.
Yeah.
Well, I'll come check it out. I'll tell you guys, it's just nice to see a lot of good feel. It feels really good. The music feels good, and I tip my cap to you, and thanks for being part of the program. Much love from the Jake Feinberg Show.
Great.
Thanks,
Much
man.
love to you.
Cheers.